Hello there, awakening wonders. If you want to free yourself from this prison planet that sees you merely as fodder, one of the tools you're going to need is an independent media. That's what me is. Independent media. Me and him over there. We're doing our best to bring you stories that are at least attempting to be transparent. We care about what you think. That's why we need you to let us know in the comments and chat what stories you want to see covered and how you think we're covering today's stories. Like we're going to be talking about...
We're also not funded by the government, are we, Russ?
They give us nothing.
No.
Every week I go back to the government,
Yep.
any of them. Hong Kong, one.
Right, yeah.
Burma. I've spoken to people in Senegal and I've said, would you be interested in investing in some independent media? They go, what is your main aim? We say, well, we just want to bring the government down, really. And they go, well, we're not going to contribute to that. No. Actually, we are the government of Senegal in this case. That was the most recent one. We've got some great guests and stories coming up just for you. If we knew you weren't interested, we'd stop doing it. Dave Rubin's coming on, the inventor of locals and the inventor of a certain type of gay, I'd say he is.
Right.
Well, we'll ask him about that when we talk to him.
I don't think you should lead with that.
Sir, of all the types of gay that there are,
right,
we claim you invented one of the types. Let's hear more about it.
I think it's the type you like most.
It's the type that I'd go for if I was to explore that aspect of my sexuality. I was probably conditioned in early life not to contemplate that avenue, but hey, is it ever too late?
No.
Never. We're going to be looking at those French protests. What we love about it is the way they targeted BlackRock. They started protesting outside an investment firm. So even though they're protesting, of course, about the age of pension being raised in France, robbing them of a couple of years of lazing about, sipping wine and being all French, they actually took it to the steps and doors of BlackRock, understanding at least tangentially that the problem is democracy itself doesn't work, even in one of the great principalities of democracy, France, where like liberté is right up there among their principles.
Not anymore.
Not now. Now you've got to start a fire and put on a yellow vest if you want anything like justice. We're going to be clicking over to being exclusively on Rumble. There's a link in the description. Have a look at it, right? And then we're going to give you the inside intel on the WHO's plans for a worldwide pandemic treaty. They're trying to usher it through. They're going to nick 5% of all your tax dollars. They want all sorts of... I mean, it's a proper little scam. If I didn't know better, I'd say that the WHO were not to be trusted. And along with them, the WF, the IMF, any of those, like if I had to trust any of them, it'd be the boxing ones.
It's acronyms for you, isn't it?
Don't trust any acronyms. Right. Look at us, stay free. We don't call ourselves SFM.
And the day we do...
Then you'll know we've accepted that Senegalese sweet dollar and that Icelandic buck. Send us your comments because we're interested in what you've got to say. Now, we're going to spend a bit of time delving right into Elon Musk's interview with Tucker and how he's trolling state-funded media. Also looking into privately funded media, because we personally don't think that that's any better. Like, do you think CNN are worse or better than the BBC? Let us know, actually, in the comments below who you think the worst ones are. MSNBC, Fox. I know a lot of you like Fox because of Tucker and stuff. You like Tucker, don't they? And what about when I was on Greg Gutfield?
Right.
That was good.
That went very well.
I had a nice time on there. In fact, Kat Timpf, I think is her name. She was on there that day that I was on there. She's coming on here later this week.
You got on very well with all of them. You're very at home.
I like the wrestler guy that looked like Thanos.
Yes.
He was good.
Very nice man.
And I like the attractive... There's an attractive woman there, an attractive woman there, and Greg Gutfield there. Not that he's not an attractive man, but...
Nice man.
Love him. Nice green jumper. What do you want from life? So we're going to look at like how Elon's digging out all these mainstream media outlets saying, you know, to what degree they're funded. And we're going to be looking at how much Pfizer, for example, and Big Pharma more broadly spend on advertising, and a surprising bit of information about how much money the British government spends on propaganda themselves. They spend our tax pounds, in our case, on propagandizing us to like them more. Why don't you just govern things better, for God's sake? And you can tell they're not taking stuff seriously now, because a lot of politicians' public appearances, I think, have started to seem uncanny, unusual, and weird. Like, look at this, right? We're going to show you Rishi Sunak in a minute, but first, like, we're going to show you Chuck Schumer acting a bit like he's on, I think, Sesame Street, I'd say. Have a look at this.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. Who's happy to be here? Raise your hands. Okay.
This is, I know it's being sort of like pseudo-ironic and playful, but this pseudo-irony is what's, I think, contributing to the decay of trust and a sort of sense that we're on a prison planet and nothing is quite real or authentic. You know, like if you watch the kind of news that us lot are into, you'll know that there's just been a bunch of revelations that they're lying to us about the war between Ukraine and Russia, sustaining it unduly even though they don't believe it's winnable, presumably in order to continue funding the military-industrial complex. You'll be aware that they're never going to address inequality. You'll know that during the pandemic there was a massive wealth transfer that affected ordinary people, destroyed small businesses, messed with the education of ordinary kids, while generally speaking politicians carried on having high profile bashes, only wearing masks on camera. That's allegedly that last one, but there are like a bunch of examples of that kind of stuff. Like I'm talking about what's the one called in California? Gavin Newsom.
That's correct.
He was doing that kind of gear. And our lot, like Rishi Sunak, he's like our 19th president in a prime minister, I don't know what we call him anymore, in like just the last couple of months, but he was the chancellor when Boris Johnson was having a party every half hour. Like he only left one party to go to another party during the pandemic, all the while they were saying you better stay in your house, never mind watching your nan die, you can watch it on the internet. They were all having a proper old knees up, gathering round a Bontempi organ, living it up down in Pringles.
Sunak was fined for it.
Sunak was?
Yeah, he got a fine for that.
He's a criminal. He's a simple criminal. I'm doing allegedly just in case. Allegedly. But if you've been fined...
I was thinking about the situation with Schumer there and the way he was talking to the, I guess it was the press, whoever it was,
hello,
gathered,
everybody.
like obedient children. And when we know the kind of questions that the press came back and asked the press secretary around the Pentagon leak recently, they were all in that manner. It was like... children, the best children at class get to ask that. You know when someone would come to your school and give a talk and your best kids, all the
sit them up the front.
Sit them up the front, ask the questions.
You don't want the glue sniffers sat near the front.
I bet you were right at the
coming
back,
out
were you?
weird questions. I wasn't a glue sniffer, but I was an unusual boy, and I might have said something strange.
You would have done.
To like a visiting dignitary. We've got the Countess of Wessex coming in. Excuse me, where did you get those tights? Can I wear your tights? Move along now, Russell. Sit at the back. Ruining this school, and it's not a very good school anyway. So, Rishi Sunak, that daft headache of a man, is trying to engage himself in some crowd work. This is an extraordinary lack of ability. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to watch someone fail to engage a crowd in the manner that he does. We're living in a simulacrum. This whole thing isn't real. It's quaking. It's glitching. It's falling apart at the seams. That is good news for those of us that are radical, and that's why using the analysis that it's no longer left versus right but periphery versus centre, even the world's richest man can be a rhetorical radical because he's asking the right questions and he is a disruptor. Look at the people that don't like him and think, yeah, I don't like them. Cool. That's sort of basically one of my diagnostic tools. Let's look at Rishi Sunak, current Prime Minister of this country, WEF stooge, hedge fund millionaire, married to a billionaire. Let's have a look at him doing a bit of crowd work and think this guy would not do too well in pantomime or any children's entertainment. Check him.
Right, who's next? Anyone else? All good? No others from you? Anyone else have some questions before we get over to the media? Okay, gosh, this is very quiet. Anyway, actually, I'll broaden up. Do you have any questions on things that are not related to maths? I'm also fine for those.
No one's got any questions on anything.
I've got a question.
Not the
what were you doing at all those
media?
parties during the COVID lockdowns?
Not you. Over there. Anyone else? Any other questions? Any at all? What about how to reduce the debt? It's like it's become, I think it's dismantling before our very eyes. I think it's glitching itself into obsolescence.
All fine? Right, okay, well, we'll turn to the media for some questions. So we start with the BBC.
Come on.
Right, who's next? Anyone else?
All right, I'm doing it. Give us a few softball questions. Maybe the reason that the machine is glitching and falling apart is because they're pumping us full of vapid, innocuous information like a bagel stuffed with cream cheese. In a minute, we're going to look at Elon and Tucker chatting about Facebook and Elon's assertion that Zuckerberg's essentially a propagandist for the Democrat Party. Maybe you don't mind that. I don't like either of the parties, to tell you the truth. But let's have a look at CNN talking about a cream cheese stuffed bagel for a while. See how long you can watch this before you start to feel despair.
Is it a bagel or more of a cream cheese donut?
It's a big question. Either way, carb lovers in the US will have a new treat, a bagel stuffed with cream cheese. It's the brainchild, if you can call
I don't like it being a brainchild,
No.
a child out of someone's brain that's made out of cream cheese in a donut. Revolting.
it that, of a New York bagel shop are the makers of Philadelphia cream cheese.
Always advertising something, they're advertising wars, weapons, and now cream cheese stuffed donuts. And that's why radical figures, whether you like them or not, like Tucker and Elon, start to get more traction because Tucker presents an interesting discourse. He is also a kind of an attack dog for the emotions of the masses. And Elon, in spite of being the world's richest man, yeah, you cried. Someone there, Stone Owen, said, I lasted 3 seconds with them donuts before I started to weep. Let's have a look at Elon and Tucker chatting together. Wait, we've got points to
I've
make
got
about the donut.
one little point about that, because it's like a funny, innocuous, essentially advertisement, isn't it? That's what we're looking at there, is what you'd prefer them to come out and say, because the reality is, CNN have been paid to do an advertisement for whoever that was, Philadelphia or whatever.
Do you think they're paid them for the bagel?
Well, in some form it's been paid. They advertise and therefore they get to, you know, it's... But basically this is the big pharma in action. This is just an innocuous, light-hearted version of what happens in the pandemic with the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, when you see stuff like Chuck Schumer going, put your hands up, it's reiterating the dynamic that you are children and the obedient children of the press will receive attention and get some focus and some shine, and the more recalcitrant children will be ignored. Rishi Sunak's apparent transparency of like, oh, you can ask me any questions, because we know it's a mock scenario that you couldn't actually say, yeah, can you tell me, did you profit from that hedge fund that was the main investor in Moderna? Did you profit from that, mate? Tell us then, tell us what was going on when you were attending those parties. You know your wife's firm, they are partners with Davos and the WEF. Do you think that's a conflict of interest when you have to represent a sovereign nation, which will sometimes put you at odds with globalist interests? When a country has voted for Brexit, meaning they don't want to be part of an administrative body like the EU, whether or not you think that's to do with racism or anti-migration, it also seems like it's against centralised bureaucracy. Why are you thinking of yielding authority to the WHO? They don't want a serious conversation. They want a conversation where you think about donuts and bagels stuffed with cheese, because that's how they think of your consciousness, your attention, mind continually located and attached continually to meaningless, empty, hollow stories. CNN are not a public broadcaster, they're a private broadcaster, but they're significantly funded by the pharmaceutical industry, at least in terms of their advertising. They make a lot of their revenue by bundling up your information, your private data, and selling it to other marketing firms, and they are to a degree owned by Vanguard and BlackRock, I'll betcha. And in this country, there's about 6 people own all of the media outlets. I think in your country, America, it's a handful of billionaires and conglomerates that own all of the media. They can't have the real conversation, so they can emphasize and amplify emotion in areas where you can't do anything, because either party would do the same thing. For example, military industrial complex expenditure on wars, either party will do more or less the same thing, or they'll distract you with culture war issues, or on a good day a bagel stuffed with cream cheese. Now that's why people like Tucker Carlson, even if you don't like Tucker, and I met him and he seemed like a pretty decent guy to me, I really liked him. Like, people say, oh, he's doing a bunch of dog whistle racism. I actually don't think they care. And I actually asked them about stuff like that, and they're like, oh, I just want to live my life. You know, like, let's not have all... Like, I reckon what we need is to decentralise power, and you run your community however you want, and it diffuses the argument. It defuses the argument. There's no need for us to be having these arguments. Certainly not on YouTube, where I have to be careful about what I say. And let's click over on the Rumble, where we can talk about real freedom. We're on here, not so that I can say crazy and divisive stuff or be irresponsible about the way we report about the pandemic in the last couple of years. Quite the contrary. in spite of my out-of-date headwear, you can rely on me more than any of those sideways Ross from Friends news anchors or those stuffed shirts on CNN or people that don't have the ability or right to speak truth to you because they're bought and paid for. Let's see Tucker chatting to Elon, see if we can glean any truth out of these.
The goal of New Twitter is to be as fair and even-handed as possible, so not favoring any political ideology, but just being fair at all.
Why doesn't Facebook do this? I know that Zuckerberg has said, and I take him at face value, that he, I do actually in this way, that he is a kind of old-fashioned liberal who doesn't like to censor. He has, but he, like, why wouldn't a company like that take the stand that you have taken, which is pretty rooted in American traditional political custom, for free speech?
My understanding is that Zuckerberg spent $400 million in the last election, nominally in a get-out-the-vote campaign, but really fundamentally in support of Democrats. Is that accurate or not accurate?
That is accurate, yes.
Does that sound unbiased to you?
No, it doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah, a bit of on the spectrum genius there from Elon
Ruthless,
Musk.
isn't he?
Yes.
Pretty ruthless.
Yes. Yeah, he's enjoyable. He's enjoyable. Come on here. We want him on here, don't we?
Yeah.
I'd go over there to get him on here. That's how much I want him on here.
Right.
I'd go there to get him on here.
Or
Now-
drag him back here.
I wouldn't drag him
No,
because think of his resources.
of course.
Like they could have private armies and
Yeah.
stuff. Like, did you drag Elon? Yeah.
Hell of a story, though.
God, what a tale. It's a tale as old as time. Radical independent news journalist. That's Seymour. Yeah, I mean, Seymour Hersh's words, not mine. Drags billionaire needlessly onto EasyJet flight. Actually cannot cross the Atlantic. Hey, so listen, what we're actually fundamentally talking about is how information is funded and whether or not the funding of the information creates an inflection and cadence within the information, whether there's an intention behind it. In a sane world, the media would be objective, or at least be aspiring to objectivity by offering impartiality. Objectivity might be philosophically impossible to achieve, but what is possible to achieve is say, look, we think this about the, I don't know, war between Russia and Ukraine, but there's also this perspective, or during the pandemic, we believe this is the best course of action. However, we would be remiss if we didn't include these voices and these concerns and doubts, or it's a continually evolving story. These are the latest studies. That's not how the media behaves. The media are essentially the henchmen of the state. That's why when the young buddy boy Texera makes those releases, the Pentagon Papers Part 2, that what you ultimately get is a media not only conveying the exact messaging that the government would want. Is it irresponsible that he did this? How irresponsible is it that he did this?
Who else tried this?
Would it make it worse? The New York Times are actually involved in chasing him. And I'll tell you who I was thinking of, Lovejoy. Like...
Seems like a good reference.
Yes, Lovejoy is a British show that's starring Ian... Ian...
McCain or something?
Come on, someone knows. Ian McShane as Lovejoy, and this is what I mean. It's like, why are the New York Times, who are meant to be a newspaper, sending people to nick Buddy Texera? Because that's not their job. They're a newspaper.
Right.
Now, Lovejoy, he was meant to be an antique dealer.
But he would solve crime.
He was always solving a crime.
I
Just
see.
sell them vases, mate.
Got it.
At an inflated price.
Yeah.
Just unduly ornament that desk and then sell it at a profit. Someone just put up there that their mum was the costume designer. Is that you, Jamie?
I mean, this is great. This is great.
Lovejoy?
Yeah, Lovejoy. I think the audience...
You don't like Lovejoy?
No, the audience, I think, this will resonate with them.
Of course they will. They love Ian McShane. He was in Deadwood or Driftwood or something. They loved that.
Driftwood.
Yeah, Driftwood, selling antiques. And his friend was called something like Pipkin or Snuffkin.
Pipsqueak or something,
Remember his
wasn't it?
best mate was called Pipkin. It was a great show.
Yeah.
Listen, I've already given you serious information. What more do you want? In a minute, we're going to talk about those protests in France, how legit they are, and how the highest court in the land has verified Macron's undemocratic decision to ignore the protests and pass laws, meaning French people will work even longer. Plus, it's exhausting being French. Have you ever seen them? They must be knackered from all the Frenchness. Oh, bonjour, glass of wine, etc. Knackering. Look at Biden. Biden's got an army of digital influencers now, ready for his next election campaign, optimistically. Elon is saying that the CBC is bugging them online, look, saying they're 69% government-funded media. Trudeau, who I think is one of the worst of these pretend to be nice, actually not nice type politicians, great hair, but does he care? Trudeau, is it Trudeau? Like, have a look at him here saying like, oh, Elon Musk's bang out of order, etc. But then we'll show you something a few years earlier, a joke he made in private. It's going to knock your little socks off. Look at him now complaining about Elon declaring the government funding behind certain media outlets. Check him out.
I think it says a lot about the Conservative Party of Canada that they're choosing to constantly attack independent media organizations, journalists who are working hard to keep Canadians informed and support our democracies.
That's all they're working hard to do is support them, support democracy, sponsored by Ericsson. Look at Trudeau a few years ago, not that long ago, I think it's in 2019, it says there. Check it out, where he just plainly admits.
You sometimes hear about liberal bias in the media these days, how they're constantly letting our government off the hook for no good reason. Frankly, I think that's insulting. It's clear that they let us off the hook for a very good reason, because we paid them $600 million.
There you go.
That will have got a laugh because it was at one of those press dinners, which is another way that you know that the government and the press actually get on extremely well. Because in America and Canada and here, they do dinners where government officials and prime ministers and leaders do jokes and stuff for members of the press. It's like, oh, okay, you know, if you want us to think that you're not linked in the way that Elon Musk is talking about, maybe stop doing those dinners.
I think I've been invited to one of those dinners. Right. The America's one, where it's where you do jokes about the president.
That's right.
I think I've been invited. But I don't think...
Turned it down?
I can't go places.
Oh, I see.
I can't go places.
No.
I wouldn't like it
You
there.
get too nervous.
Too nerve-wracking to go to a place. Anything could happen once you're out of the house, couldn't it? It's chaos out there. So look at the guy. Right, so in our country, the government spent more money than every single corporation and commercial interest in their endeavour to make us like them. Look at that, 163 million British pounds. Remember, that's more than $1, and he's also got the Queen.
Not anymore.
Leave her on there. I ain't ready for Charlie on me money. Are you, mate?
No.
I can't take Charlie on me money. No way.
Not yet.
And do you see how they've changed it from Queen Consort to just Queen?
Oh, dear. Too soon.
Diana! Is it Christmas already?
I don't know what's happening.
Okay, so look at that. That's the government spending all that money on propagandizing us. But over in America, look, it's big pharma that dominate all the advertising. The outlay on ads by the tech industry fell over the first 2 months of the year. They're number 2 in the charts. The biggest story is that pharma doubled down, increasing its share of total spending from 12% to 14%. So I think the biggest spender on advertising is pharma, and number 2 is big tech. Where are the MIC in there? Look at that. There they go. There's all the billions that are being spent. 4.5 billion. We've got another one on this. Is there another still on this? Or is that all of them?
I'm not sure there is. I think that's all. I mean, this, you know, when you discover, and I think Michael Schellenberg was talking about this the other day, maybe yesterday, and the kind of trust from the American public in media, it's no wonder, is it? The more and more access to information we have about things like this, that the pharmaceutical industry is the biggest sponsors of basically network cable television.
Yeah, give us the information.
You know, it's like, no wonder trust is diminished to an all-time low when you know things like that.
They complain about figures like Elon Musk and Tucker, but actually what they never address is the problem that's led to the rise of disruptive voices. If you had a decent, moral government, a fair, authentic and transparent media, then these radical voices wouldn't seem so extraordinary, exciting and enlivening, because there wouldn't be an environment that's so thirsty for authenticity of any kind. And that isn't to undermine some of the things that Donald Trump said that were a little bit out there, let's face it. Okay, we're going to if you're watching us on YouTube and you're having the time of your life right now, I understand why, because you're getting dosed up on truth. There's more truth in this show than there is cream cheese in a new New York bagel, baby. We're stuffed, brimming over with truth. Whether it's wisdom and insights into Lovejoy, a 1980s British TV show, or an interrogation on advertising expenditure within the mainstream. It's a bit noise somewhere. Where am I picking that noise up from?
I can hear noise.
What is it?
Who knows? Is it Lovejoy?
Lovejoy, is that you?
Lovejoy's come back.
It's got to be in the gallery. There he is.
There he is. There's Lovejoy.
I'd like to see the titles, actually, myself.
Right. Maybe at the end of the show.
But we can't, yeah, something to look forward to. But we can't put that ahead of the WHO's new plans for a global pandemic treaty and possibly world domination. If you're watching this now on YouTube, click over to watching this exclusively on Rumble. You're not going to believe how undemocratic this stuff is. They want your tax dollars. They want the right to pass laws. They're up to all sorts of crazy stuff. YouTube, we're clicking off now. Join us over on Rumble.